Hi, I'm Mike Bush.
I'm Paul New.
And I'm Colleen Sterling.
We're having way too much fun.
Yes, and we haven't even started yet.
That's right.
Welcome to Ask the A&Ps from AOPA.
This is the show where you guys get to ask your toughest questions, and sometimes we give you right answers, and sometimes we don't. So, at any rate, if you have a question for us, please email us at podcasts@aopa.org for a chance to get on the show.
Make sure and follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode where we either make up a right answer or a wrong answer. You get to guess which one it was.
You pick.
Yeah, and if you'd like to get on our mailing list for our monthly newsletter and other good stuff, easiest way to do that is to text the word SAVVY, SAVVY, to 33777, and a bot will pop up on your smartphone and ask you for your name and email address and add you to our mailing list. So that's text SAVVY, SAVVY, to 33777 to put yourself on our list.
So I'm going to be a caller again. I think I did that a few episodes ago.
Yeah, we tried to help.
Yeah, you tried to help.
Tried.
I don't know what help there is for me. So I'm in a little bit of a quandary, and I hate to admit this, so try not to let it get out. So don't want anybody to know that I'm contemplating this.
Just between us three, Paul.
Just between the three of us, just between us gals. My oil consumption is back up again. So I've done a little history. I've done 2 ring washes, and identified 2 cylinders that had clogged oil return rings. Addressed those 2 cylinders, and things improved dramatically for a little while. They got up to about a quart in 4 hours. Now I'm back down to pretty close to a quart per hour, which is the continental limit. And I just have a feeling that I've got more than 1 cylinder that's an issue. I may do another ring wash at the next oil change, just as an experiment.
To find out which cylinders are the culprits.
Yeah, to again find out which cylinders are the culprits. And, so I've done 2. I'm hoping that those are still good. They should be.
So on your last ring wash, Paul, were there any cylinders where you simply could not force the fluid through?
Right. There was one that I could get no fluid through, and another one that took effort. Some fluid went through, but it took a lot of pressure.
And did you pull those 2 cylinders, or?
I did. I pulled those 2 and addressed those 2, and then that, of course,
that helped. So maybe some other cylinders now are
right. Yeah. So of course, those 2 cylinders were on opposite sides of the engine. They couldn't be next to each other.
Uh-huh.
And so now the chances of it being on opposite sides are pretty high. And I think, I'll have to go back and look at the records, but I think it may have been cylinders 4 and 3, which means they were in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just at this frustration level of at what point do I decide that I really have to pull the plug and do this thing? Because I don't want to, because right now, beginning with going to Oshkosh, is my flying season all the way through the end of November. I have presentations or events pretty close to every weekend, not including doing remote pre-buys and that sort of thing. So it's an awful lot of flying. You
can't stand the downtime.
Yeah, the downtime is a problem. So then you have to get creative on determining what your oil consumption is. How often do I check, and how often do I wait? So.
You mean so that you get a result you like? Is that what?
Yes, exactly. Well, it's pretty easy to manipulate these numbers. I'm just saying.
Plus there's the significant impact on his weight and balance, because he's got to carry a couple of cases of oil on the back of the airplane all the time.
Wow.
Almost all of my trips are 2.5 to 3.5 hour trips. So that means I'm gonna put a quart of oil.
Wow.
At least 1 on every trip on the way.
Yeah.
And it's not a safety of flight issue. I'm not worried about that at all. And it's not dumping out on the belly. I know it's consuming it. And some people say, well, is there oil in your exhaust stack? I hear people say that, and I've never seen oil in an exhaust stack.
I haven't either.
Not from burning,
Mhm.
So anyway, at what point do I pull the plug? And it seems to me like it's probably going to be December.
I mean, but if you let it go, right, one of your rings could get stuck and then break, right?
Well, they probably already stuck, but I don't think they're going to break. Yeah, and it's an oil return ring.
I've had an oil return ring break on my Cardinal.
Oil control ring.
Oil control ring. Sorry, yeah, I've had it break, but maybe I let it go way too long, but I didn't know back then.
And
Paul, what do you usually use as an oil change interval?
This is personal.
I didn't mean to embarrass you, but my theory is that on engines like the Cirrus engine that have a large displacement and a small oil capacity, that really the oil change interval ought to be shortened, because you're asking a small amount of oil to absorb an awfully large amount of lead laden blow by.
I totally agree. My planned interval is 25 to 30 hours.
Oh, that's probably about right then. But it doesn't always work out that way, in other words.
It doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah.
I got admonished. Blake, our director of maintenance, kind of weighed into me a little bit a couple of months ago and says, "When was your last oil change?" I don't remember.
I don't know, Paul. With all of the countless minions you have working for you, surely.
Countless minions.
I don't have any. Well, I do have a minion. I have Dave.
Yeah, Dave. Yeah. As it turns out, I'm pretty sure that I'm the minion. I don't do the oil change, but I'm the minion that someone says, "Hey, it's time for you to do this."
Yeah.
And anyway, so I guess it's going to be time. I'm going to have to do another rig wash, but I'm probably going to finagle my way to put it off until December.
I think it will be really good when you can convert over to unleaded fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am looking forward to that possibility.
That's going to help.
Yeah. So, and I'm out of warranty, so nobody gets to complain with all the recent.
You're out of warranty. You're so far out of warranty that.
I'm out of warranty too.
Yeah. I think all three of us are.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
My warranty has run out.
In
more ways than one.
I'm not consuming oil at the same rate my airplane is. Oh,
okay. Well, just
could have gone on without that.
Carry a lot of oil in a rag until you get this thing solved.
Yeah. I'm working on
it's not a safety of flight issue unless you run out of oil before you run out of fuel.
That's right. So, and I'm not doing that. I am designing a new funnel that'll fit in a particular way so that when I put oil in on a windy day at a Duane airport, it doesn't fall over and dump a whole quart of oil on top of the engine instead of.
That's a waste of oil. Yep.
It is.
That's so messy.
It is messy. I'll let you know. You'll love it.
Our first question is from Ethan, who doesn't feel like going for a swim. Go ahead, Ethan.
No, so I've had this issue with the aircraft I've been flying for the last year, and it's a recurring issue that's lasted past the engine, which is really, really weird. I'll give you a lot more details. And right now, I found a temporary fix for most of the solution. So I'll give you guys a backstory. So around a year ago, I got a SureFly electric ignition installed on IO550 on a Cessna Skyline. And supposedly, it was supposed to help with performance and help with a lot of different things, or fuel efficiency, stuff like that. But what was weird was that after it got installed, I started seeing a lot higher CHTs, both leaner peak and richer peak. And it was very, very high, especially when running leaner peak. I would have to be, like, for example, I'd be at 10,000, maybe I'll be at 8,500 feet, burning like 11 gallons an hour, maybe 10 gallons. So I might be running like 100, 150 leaner peak. And so I have a GPI EDM 930, so it gives me pretty specific data. And the weirdest part about that, even when running 100, 150 degrees leaner peak, was that I'll have cylinders 1, 3, and 5 on average 80 to 120 Fahrenheit hotter than 2, 4, and 6. which would be like, I'll have one cylinder like maybe 260 Fahrenheit, another cylinder like 380 Fahrenheit, 390 Fahrenheit, which I was kind of like, ooh, that looks kind of weird. And the thing is, the issue with this is that before the electric ignition, it wasn't really there. So after I installed the electric ignition, not only were the temperatures higher, but the CHT wasn't balanced, right? And I did learn a lot more about that later on, but that was about it. So I tried to find some issues with it. Try to find some solutions to the issue. So I went to the local mechanics. I installed a new top baffling. And after I installed the new top baffling, the issue was still there. Or maybe it went down a couple of degrees, but the issue overall was still there. So I was like, wow, it's not the baffling issue? And then I was really, really confused. And but I didn't really have a choice. And I actually started flying around the world last year. So I was like, I have to go start flying around the world. And so I started. I went from Massachusetts to Memphis, Tennessee, because that's the home of St. Jude Children's Hospital. And that's kind of who I'm working with to raise money for. And I climbed to maybe 11,000, 12,000 feet. And then my second cylinder had temperature drop maybe from 350 Fahrenheit to like 260 Fahrenheit. I was like, oh, that's weird. I felt a bit of rattling. And I looked at it and I was like, it could be an intake. It could be a fuel injection, like maybe blockage, but then EGT was still there. So that was kind of weird. Then I was like, there's probably something wrong with the compression or a crack in the cylinder. I wasn't too sure. But eventually I landed. I got some mechanics to look over it. They spun the blade 1, 2, 3, boom, kicked back. They opened it. We looked at the second cylinder. Had some cracks. And then the other issue was that the intake valve looked like it would get sucked into the cylinder. That's what they quote unquote said. I looked at the borescope, but I didn't fully understand, or it just looked kind of weird. The intake valve was also burnt, so it was greenish, orange, stuff like that. And so I ended up doing a top-end overhaul, or what we thought would be a top-end overhaul. The engine had around 900 hours on it. And once the cylinders...
You did all 6 cylinders?
All 6, because overall, it just ran way too hot. All the cylinders looked damaged. And I wasn't too sure, and I was about to cross the Atlantic. And so I was like, might as well play safe in that situation, hopefully. And when we started taking off the cylinders and taking a look at some of the camshafts and some of the crankshafts inside, the cam lifters had metallurgy corrosion issues. And I think that was just from Continental on their side, nothing to do with the STCs or other stuff on the engine. But I think the crankshaft was damaged too. It might have been burnt or something else was wrong with it. And so I ended up needing a whole new engine. So I reached out to Continental and a bunch of other companies. It was a 3 to 6 month wait, but luckily there was one company that was willing to send me one that was they had. And so I got one in a couple of weeks to put in a new engine. And put in a new engine, everything was good, like new engine, old baffling, everything else. Took off the electric ignition. So 2 standard mags, standard IO550B, broke it in and put in gammies, and then still had the issue with the weird, weird uneven temperature. And then a couple weeks ago, I actually took this plane and this engine issue to 5 or 6 mechanics. Some of them said, hey, if we didn't have modern instruments, you wouldn't even know this was an issue, so it's okay. Some of them said it's below 400 or like 380. Continental says it's fine if it's below 430. Like, it's not a big deal. I was like, it is to me. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, another one of them was like, oh, maybe it could be intake valve, right? It could be, the intake has a leak. Or another one said maybe the cowl flaps. Another one said maybe the baffling. And someone else said maybe the timing. So we got all of that looked. Still the same issue. And same issue. And then eventually Electro Air sponsored me. So they sent me over some equipment. So I just got that installed. Hopefully electric ignition this time works a bit better. And it did. It did the same thing, like even with E-mags or standard mags or anything, it always had the same problem, uneven.
So if it's going to be that, you've changed the mags, so we know it's not an ignition issue. But my question is, have you done an in-flight gammy lean test or an induction leak test?
Yeah. So
And what's the spread?
The spread was, I believe, 0.9 back then. We got that fixed up all the way down to 0.4.
Okay.
The temperature variance is still pretty strong there. And the induction leak test, I've done it twice. The first time I found like 12 leaks. It was pretty bad. So I got those all tightened up. And I did another leak test a week or two later. There was like 1 or 2 or 3 other ones. That was all done too. But actually, what was interesting was, I think this is where the attention to detail part comes by. I sent you this email maybe 2-3 weeks ago, but since then I got one more mechanic to look at it, I guess, who was a lot more attention detail. And what he noticed was that the back baffle, so since the 182, the baffles are kind of split apart, like somewhere on the bottom, somewhere on the top cowling, right? The back cowling baffling rubs against the bottom one, right? But there's 2 parts where it didn't rub. And when you look at it closely, especially when it runs really, really hot, the baffling wasn't actually cut like a curve, like the curve with the top baffling. So there was little ridges on the back.
Wrinkles. Yeah.
And so wrinkles. You slice those with the razor blade and make them lay flat.
They didn't, I guess. And I guess what was really interesting is that when it when it runs hot, the engine runs hot, it heats up the silicone even more. Silicone gets even hotter and softer. I guess the wrinkles get even bigger. And I guess that's where a lot of the air was leaking. So I got that fixed up, right? And so most of the problems disappeared. So I guess it's a baffling issue from the start. But this is
in both senses of the word. Right?
Yeah. And then this is kind of where the weird part gets even weirder. This is the other issue. So now it works below 7,500 feet. When I'm are usually above 130 knots true airspeed. 130 knots indicated airspeed. The temperatures are all really even. Maybe cylinder 6. Cylinder 6, the front. I don't remember. Sorry, my memory.
Left front.
Which one is the front one, not behind the oil cooler?
That's number 6, left front.
Number 6.
Right? So number 6 is maybe like the lowest, like significantly lower than other ones, but the other ones have like a 20-30 degree spread now in Fahrenheit.
That's
so it's
good.
pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
But the weird part is, once I get above 8,500 and my indicated airspeed drops or something else changes, or I climb, or I don't know what happens, but then my back two just start rapidly rising. Like my back two, like I have not been able to cruise above 8,000 feet without having my back two be below like 390 Fahrenheit. I'll be at maybe 12 gallons, 11 gallons an hour. All the other cylinders would be like 330. Then the back two, 1 and 2 would be like 380, 390. It's super weird.
I think you still have a baffling issue. As you climb, your angle of incidence, not angle of incidence, angle of attack is going to be different. I think the airflow is changing inside the cowling. The 550 conversion, I don't see very many of those, so I can't really say what it looks like, but I still think you have a baffling issue.
Interesting, because usually when I climb, it's like richer peak temperatures like 320, 330, 350, 360. It's pretty normal. But even when I level off at like 8,500, 9,500, 10,500, I give it half an hour, both of those remain really hot, which is, I guess, the weirdest part for me. And it's been causing some
that makes
issues.
Perfect sense. When you level off, the airflow changes, the path of the airflow, because you level the airplane. And so the flow of the air inside that cowling is going to change. It's all about pressure differential.
Yeah.
But there is an element of flow. And if you change the way the air comes into the cowling, you change how it flows past the cylinders.
Okay. So would you recommend me to get the back side of the baffling rechecked? Like what would cause the two back
cylinders? It could be inter-cylinder bafflings too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Like the baffling around the cylinders, or what?
But you know, I think it's worth saying that, look, this is a very crude cooling system. You're never going to get completely even CHTs. I mean, if you can get the CHTs spread within 50 degrees, you're doing good. So don't obsess about trying to get them exactly correct. This is not a Cirrus. This is an old design.
With a new
and modified,
because it's a 550 that's being stuffed into a engine compartment was designed for a 470.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's just the comment that some mechanic made that said if you didn't have an engine monitor you wouldn't even notice it. There's some truth to that.
It is fair.
We
that doesn't mean we're going to ignore it.
No, of course not. But you have to have reasonable expectations about this.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree.
Your tail also brought up a couple other comments that really don't have anything directly to do with your problem, but I just feel compelled to comment that if I was flying across the Atlantic, the last thing I would want to do is replace all of the cylinders right before I did.
Oh
it.
yeah.
And
yeah.
even worse, the last thing I'd want to do is replace the engine right before I did it. Okay, because I don't want to be having infant mortality problems while I'm flying over a lot of water.
That I do understand. So I ended up putting 170 hours.
That's good.
Okay, that's good. We feel better.
Yeah.
Same plan as the standard 6 cylinders. I would have had to break those in too.
And let me ask a question because I got a little confused along the way. But you started with a SureFly, I guess one SureFly and one standard mag.
Yeah.
You then went to 2 standard mags, and then you made some comment about electroware. Do you have an electroware system on there now?
Now it does.
Yeah, now I do. They sent me over one and helped me get installed. And
It was free.
Yeah, but the new baffling works perfectly fine.
For now. Yeah.
Okay, well, the only reason I mention that is that we've seen a rash of catastrophic failures with the electroware system.
Look at his face.
the mag, what they call the MTH, the mag timing device that bolts where the magneto normally goes, has had problems with gears coming apart in it. So, I'll keep my fingers crossed.
But it's fine. He's got a backup magneto.
He's got a backup mag.
Yeah, that's true.
He can stroke his way across the Atlantic.
That's true.
I mean, I've made it past the Atlantic. I'm in Germany now, so that's Atlantic.
It wouldn't hurt to carry a spare mag in the baggage compartment just in case.
Actually, I have. I thought about carrying it with me, but I have it packed up in a box ready.
That's
shipping.
smart. That's good.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not a big fan of tractor mags either. Those we see distributor gears and those things coming apart. They got a lot of plastic stuff in them, and
it's mandatory to be plastic, though, right? Since the FAA mandated.
Well, it has to be plastic because it can't be conductive. You can't put metal gears in a magneto when you have 30,000 volts floating around. So
that is true.
It has to be non-conductive.
How was the flight? Did it go okay?
I mean, it went okay. Most of it was fine. Greenland was kind of sketchy because Greenland, the inner is like a big glacier. It goes up to maybe 10,500. That's like the MSA. And so I started climbing to around 11,500. My back two cylinders was just running really, really, really hot. Like they're probably going to go up to 400, and I didn't want to fly 2, 3, 4 hours on 400 Fahrenheit. Maybe that's right, wrong, but personally, that was just my thought.
400 is okay. I would start to get a little antsy if it got above 420 on a continental cylinder. But again, this is a pretty extreme mission, it would be really nice if all of the cylinders were at 380 degrees Fahrenheit, but that's just never going to happen.
But the OAT must have been pretty cold up there.
The OAT was probably negative. Oh, we're talking about Fahrenheit or Celsius right now.
We're always talking Fahrenheit on this show.
Okay. It was probably around 10 Fahrenheit, maybe.
Yeah. So I'm surprised it had cooling issues with that cold temperature.
Yeah, that's what kind of surprised me because the front cylinder was like 240, 50 Fahrenheit.
Well, there is probably still a baffling issue that it's causing the rear cylinders not to get as much cooling air as they should.
Do you know what would cause it as you go higher?
We can't identify specifically what the problem is because we can't see the airplane.
Yeah.
But when you level the airplane off, the airflow changes. and the distribution of the air among the cylinders is going to be different.
Well, also, there's a significant issue with air density. I mean, when in my Cessna Turbo 310, the hardest cooling problems are when you're up at the flight levels.
Sure.
Right.
And it's cold as heck up there.
Yeah.
But there aren't a lot of air molecules. You know?
You don't have any mass.
Where,
Yeah, you run out of mass.
Oh, I guess that is.
I mean, basically, the cooling air that is going over that engine is indicated airspeed, and as as you climb higher, indicated airspeed goes down.
Yeah. I think that's what I kind of mentioned.
So that the cooling air is going down.
When I'm below 130 knots, I think that's when it starts to get really, really hot.
Yeah.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
Perfect sense.
Gotcha. Is there any way to potentially try to reduce that? It's baffling.
So in Lycomings, those rear cylinders have a problem with the baffling flush against the cylinders. I think it's different in continental cast cylinders so you can't do a mod to push the baffling off to get the air to go behind the cylinder on a continental.
Well, I'm not saying you can't do that.
Well, I've done that on my airplane on the
Have you?
On the number 2 cylinder. There's a baffle back there, and I just stuck a little piece of high temperature hose in there as a spacer to push it back.
Yeah, I've done that on my Cardinal. So
give that a try.
Take a little bit of that silicone and double it upon itself and jam it in between the baffling and the cylinder to create a little gap in the back where the air can flow down the back of the cylinders 1 and 2, the ones right in front of the pilot and co-pilot.
Yeah,
push the baffling off the cylinder.
The number 2 cylinder is a little problematic because it's sharing its air with the oil cooler.
Yeah, I mean, I expect that side to always run a bit hotter because it's the warm air always flowing through.
So it's not surprising because a lot of the air that would normally be cooling that cylinder is diverted through the oil cooler, and it's and you need it going through the oil cooler. It's so like I said, it's a very crude cooling design, and it's never going to be exactly even.
Absolutely. Was the vice a bent?
So the orange silicone flexible stuff, cut a piece of it out, like an inch square or something, double it, fold it in half, and jam it between the back baffling and the back of that cylinder. So create a gap between the cylinder and the baffling by jamming some baffling material, some silicone.
You're making a spacer. It's just a spacer.
It's very crude and simple, but it'll allow more a room for the air to flow there.
Interesting. Okay, I appreciate it. I'm going to probably try that tomorrow in Switzerland.
Yeah, test it out really good. You're experimenting, so test it out before you go out over, like a desert or mountains or water or any number of really scary places.
Where are you going next?
Tomorrow I have a flight to Switzerland, so I'm meeting a mechanic there for an oil change, and then I'll be there for a week. I got to finish up some work, and then I'll be heading down to Italy, then Greece, then Egypt, and then the Middle East, then Pakistan, Asia, Australia, then China, then Japan, then over the Pacific, back to Alaska.
That's a lot of visas. That's a lot of.
You have plenty of time to get it figured out before you go back over the Pacific.
Absolutely. So hopefully this should be everything. Hopefully it should be all fixed by then.
Ethan, do you have a website where we could follow you?
Yeah, if you're interested, it's flightagainstcancer.com.
Okay.
Very cool.
So,
very cool.
Yeah, just a super simple trip. I think all 7 continents.
Super simple trip. Oh my goodness.
Can you see the youth in his face and his attitude? Yeah.
I feel like I lost a lot of my youth from dealing with the engine problems.
I'm sure you did.
When I first started, I thought I was invincible. I was like, I'm not dying anytime soon.
Yeah, right.
13, right?
Well, you sound pretty darn invincible to me.
Yeah. You're doing pretty good.
Wow.
I'm scared. I mean, that's why I'm so worried about the engine. I'm like, I only have one engine, man. It's a one piston engine.
The cylinder head temperature gets above 400. It should get your attention. If it gets above 420, then you need to do something like right now.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, it would be nice if it was around 380, but just, it's not always going to be that way.
Understood.
And
Cool
the
question.
cooling system, like I said, is a pretty crude cooling system in those airplanes, and so you're never going to get an exactly balanced cylinder head temperature. Unless you want a water cooling engine or something. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
That would be ideal, wouldn't it? I mean, what is like a general operating? I guess what's like the general TBO for a 550, and what's like what temperature?
There's no TBO.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Just
No,
monitor it.
Monitor.
Yes, TBO should be removed from your vocabulary.
Just
Okay.
keep changing the oil, monitoring all the indicators.
Fly it until it gives indication of not being happy.
What I guess how would you increase his longevity, right? Like more oil changes, lower temperatures. Like what is any advice on that?
Yeah.
Yep. Fly it often, like you're doing.
Yeah.
Fly it a lot.
Frequently. Yeah. You're flying it pretty frequently as it is.
Oh, actually, quick question: power setting regarding like power setting, lean to peak. So like if I run it because I believe for the Continentals it's 60% peak EGT, and it's like 65% you can run at peak below.
Horsepower,
Don't
60.
pay any attention. Don't pay any attention to any of that stuff.
No, I
Well,
just
You can always run it lean. You can
Fine.
always run it lean to peak. It's the kindest thing you can do to the engine to run it lean to peak.
In a
no
car.
matter what power setting.
Absolutely. Of course, when you run it lean to peak, the power is going to get reduced automatically. It's just,
Yeah.
The conventional wisdom is to run it lean of peak below 60 or 65% power. So, but
Yeah,
Mike
that's
likes
what I
to use
normally
this engine and do it at all
Gotcha.
regimes. But I personally wouldn't do lean of peak in a climb. But really, what you're watching is your CHTs.
I climb lean to peak
I've
all
flown
the
with
time.
Mike.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But again, I'm turbocharged.
Yeah.
I think the reason not to run lean to peak in a climb in a normally aspirated airplane is because you probably don't want to tolerate the loss of power in a climb.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I think for Cirruses, they started leaning it out too once they climb high enough. I could be wrong.
Well,
Everybody should.
anything, when I teach the Cirrus classes, if it's normally aspirated, I do the same thing for Cessna. You lean as you climb to maintain
that's
the
true.
same EGT or something like that. On the turbo Cirruses, the 22 Ns or Ts, they'll run at 85% lean to peak. It's in their POH.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. But then they have the same engine as me, but turbocharged. So could I run it?
No, it's not the same engine as yours.
I thought it was 550 10, right?
It's close.
It's close, but it's not the same. But nevertheless, you can still run it the same way.
Is the 550 conversion on the Skylane that's not a top induction system?
No,
it's
it's a lower induction system, which is the huge
so
difference between the two.
Yeah.
Would that affect like anything on the pilot side for operating?
No,
Gotcha.
just means you're not going to have balanced induction. You can't do anything about it. So you balance the injectors. So you're stuck. That's just a function of the design.
Oh, so the top ones are balanced.
Oh, they're more balanced. Yeah.
More balanced. They're not
didn't know
perfect, but they're closer.
Oh,
Which is
actually
part of
makes
your
a lot
problem.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes
and that's
a lot of
part of
sense.
your problem.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The bottom induction engines like what you have inherently have rear cylinders that run lean and front cylinders that run rich.
Yes.
And the GAM ejectors try to compensate for that by having a larger nozzle size in the back and a smaller nozzle size in the front in order to try to equalize it. But it's a very asymmetrical system. If you think about
that is true. I talked to John Paul a lot about that. He was kind of like, it is what it is.
It is.
Yeah, and that's true.
Yeah. I agree.
Which is why nowadays when people have these engine monitors with digital readouts and they're obsessing about a 3-degree difference, it's like, oh, come on, this is 1940s technology.
Yeah.
Man, it would be a lot nicer if we could improve that, but
Yeah.
Well, Ethan, I think we've kind of run out of time on your question. I know we were behind to begin with, but we want to wish you luck and to remind everybody it's flightagainstcancer.com. So we'll be watching you, and we hope you have a very successful trip.
We'd like to hear from you when you get to China or Japan.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
absolutely.
Let us know
I'll
it
send
well.
you guys the email soon. Then I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay.
for answering the
Yeah.
question.
Have fun.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Ethan.
Thank you. Well, have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.
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 Our next question is from Fred, whose engine threw a temper tantrum. I hate when that happens. Go ahead, Fred.
Great. Thank you. I love the podcast. And yes, this question is in that category of what on earth would cause an engine to do this? And at 15,000 feet in clouds around thunderstorms, I would like to avoid this ever happening again if I could figure out what happened. So hopefully you guys have a better baseless theory than I have. I've tried to come up with an explanation.
A better baseless theory.
Yeah, well, there's no evidence unless, I thought about Paul, you're a Cirrus guy. You could fly in the right seat, and maybe we could strap Mike to the cowling or something. And he could look over. I don't know how you could figure this out. Anyhow, this happened last October. I was flying from Boerne, Texas to Louisville, Kentucky, where I live. I was going to be flying at 15,000 feet. Ceilings were about 4,000. Tops were about 12,000. So I was going to be able to go through and then navigate some clouds around.
What kind of airplane are we talking about?
The Cirrus SR-22.
A
non-turbo.
Non-turbo Gen 2.
Okay. Yep. My airplane. All right.
Yeah, a pretty new engine. It's about 100 hours on a Continental factory rebuild. So, it's kind of a newish old plane in a lot of ways. No trouble until this flight. And it was warm. It was probably about 85 degrees, climbing to 90. I took off about 12:30 in the afternoon. Should have been a good flight, long. So I was going to fly conservatively to, try not to make a fuel stop. I'm climbing, probably, it's the third time at oxygen levels for me. I hadn't flown high often at this point. Around 10,000 feet, I'm in the clouds, and I'm noticing cylinder 6, which is the one that likes to run the hottest for me, is passing through 380 and continuing to climb, and, makes me nervous. I like to watch the engine monitor as I climb. I decide I'm going to slow down.
We'll have to get to put a little spacer in there. Oh, this is cylinder 6?
Yeah. Yeah, cylinder 6.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
never mind.
Previous call. Keep going.
So I decide I'm going to, kind of stop climbing for a little bit. I want to kind of get control of it before it goes because, it tends to lag a little bit. As I level off, it continues to climb a little bit, kind of touches 400, and I want it to come back down. ATC noticed that I stopped climbing. I just let them know what was going on. They were fine.
So
back down
hang on just a second. Were all of them climbing or just the one?
Just the one.
They were all kind of in the 370, 380.
But were they climbing?
Oh yeah, everything's climbing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, they're all climbing, but one is
6 is just the hottest. They're all just
it's
going
the hottest.
Okay, got it.
Correct. So everything, cools back off. So I decide to start climbing again. I'm climbing. I don't climb as aggressively in cruise now that I was back in October. So I was probably climbing at 110 indicated airspeed. I would probably climb 120. Yeah, I'd probably climb 120, 130 now. That was, learn something. That's probably why I was getting hot. And so I noticed as I start climbing, the first thing I noticed, the climb performance was miserable. I'm probably doing 200, 250 feet per minute, really slow climb rate.
Wow.
I end up
Wait a minute,
changing
this is a normally aspirated Cirrus up at 15,000 feet. How fast are you
going
to
take the time?
He was only at 10. At 10, he should still be doing an easy 500 feet a minute.
Okay.
All right.
So climb performance wasn't real great. I ended up dialing the indicated airspeed down to 95 in order to get enough climb rate to make it to 15. I made it there. Level off. A little nervous about the performance, but because I hadn't done it that often at that height, I'm thinking maybe I'm near the service limit. I'm learning something new about the airplane. I thought it should be better than that, but I'm not an expert. About the time I level off and I pull I'm going to do the hard yank on the mixture to go lean a peak and, kind of get it dialed down once it's settled in speed. And the engine just goes, and and wants to die. It's like, oh, too much. Push it back. You know, when you touch something and it goes wrong, I say put it back where it was, right? just I put it back where it was. Worse.
So you're rich at peak.
Okay.
You're rich at peak now, right?
Now he is, yeah.
Yeah, now I'm rich at peak. I push it all the way forward. It wants to die completely, like dead,
well,
flooded.
It's really red.
Dead.
All the way forward. It should die.
Yeah, it should die.
I pull it back again, and it's stumbling. And at this point, I think, oh my, and it's off and on at this point. So it's like, the only thing I notice on the engine monitor is when it does it, the EGTs drop to the bottom of the scale.
Yeah.
All of them.
Did you have the boost pump on?
Nope.
I did not.
Yeah.
You have vapor lock. Yep.
Vapor lock.
Vapor lock.
Yep.
Yeah, at altitude. Yep. Because you have hot engine boiling off, right? And at altitude, the vapor pressure is lower, so it's boiling off quicker. And until the engine cools down, you're going to have vapor lock, and you need to run the boost pump on low. Above, what would you say, Paul? 12,000, 10,000?
Well, yeah, it's not a bad idea to have it on above 10. A lot of people on Cirrus will run their boost pump all the time.
All the way?
I do that on my 310. I run it on low all the time. That's not what the POH says, but that's what I do.
Yeah, it'll do it. And what you're doing, as Colleen says, in the engine-driven fuel pump, which is attached to the back of the engine, it's very hot. And so the fuel gets warmed up and you create vapor. You turn on the electric boost pump, and the idea, it just gives it a little extra push to force the fuel through the pump and purge the air or vapor that's being created. There's a vapor return that goes back to the fuel tank. So you could also have a restriction in that vapor return line. Very unlikely, but possible. But vapor is the thing that I would go for first. Just turn on the boost pump, see what it does.
If you weren't running the boost pump, then this isn't a big surprise.
Yeah.
Is this in the POH, Paul, for that airplane?
Now, that's a good question. I haven't read my POH in a year or so, but it is. So I know this is not the same airplane.
The low position of the boost pump is strictly to prevent vapor lock, right? I mean, there's no other function of having a two-position pump.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the POH in that sense. I don't know that it's in the POH in the sense of if this happens, do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways the POH could read. One could read if the engine's running rough, turn on the pump, and the other could read use the pump above X altitude. And I don't know,
right.
I don't know which it does.
And on the turbo aircraft, it does specifically state at certain altitudes turn on the pump. So, like on the Cessna 210, which has arguably almost the same design, the details are different. I had an issue with vapor to the point that there's an AD that requires a placard on the instrument panel that says when your fuel flow fluctuates, you turn on the boost pump and change fuel tanks. So you don't need to change fuel tanks. Well, that wouldn't hurt, but I don't think it would help.
Yeah, well, that change fuel tanks is because of the 210s,
the header tanks,
little header tanks, which the Cirrus doesn't have.
Didn't have. But
anyway, you definitely want the boost pump on low when you're flying up high like that.
Yep.
I'll
leave mine on for the climb at least.
Gotcha. I usually turn it off, as you get up about halfway up, around 8,000, 6,000, 8,000 feet. I usually turn it off. But it sounds like
somewhere around 11 is where it's going to want to see it.
You need it. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. No, I never.
There's really no downside to leaving it on all the time, I don't think.
Yeah. It's a continuous operation pump, so it shouldn't hurt it.
There is wear and tear. Eventually it would, I guess it would eventually have to reduce the lifespan, but not by much.
Something
and the
amazing.
vapor lock would happen intermittently for a little bit because it would do that, and then I would have 15, 20 seconds of good running, and then it would do it. And then
bubbles,
it would go on.
Bubbles, no bubbles, bubbles again, no bubbles. That's what's going on.
And probably over time it would happen less and less often as
the fuel's
things start cooling down.
Yep.
Yeah,
and that's exactly
in cruise, the engine cools down. You go from 380, 400 degrees down to 340 or whatever your CHTs are. So the whole engine cools down.
That's perfect. Wow, you guys are amazing.
And it's particularly important to turn on the pump when you have passengers in the air.
Yes.
Yes. And you're not in
Absolutely.
the class.
Yeah.
Make sure you're, yeah.
No, I was just
think,
I was just going to remark something remarkable happened here. We all seem to agree on this. That never happens, you know.
I think we have 100% solution for you here, Fred. You shouldn't.
Well, that's fantastic. I've chatted around the hangars and the airport with lots of people, and you know, everyone's been stumped. But it sounds like you guys have a unanimous explanation that actually makes sense. So
you got to watch the signal to noise ratio when you're chatting around the hangar like that.
It's good noise, though. It's all right. Okay.
Thank you guys. That was an easy one, I guess, for you guys. I threw you a softball, apparently. I appreciate your help.
Yeah.
It makes us look better. Thank you.
Makes us look good. That's right.
That's right. We'll send you a Christmas card.
Awesome. Appreciate
it. Take care, Fred. Enjoy your service.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Fred. Our next question is Benny, who looks like he's heading for a breakup. Good to see you, Benny. What's up?
Well, potentially, you know, we really do love our A&P. He's really turned out to be quite fantastic, available when we need him most of the time. Is, you know, come out. We had a flat tire on a weekend and made a special trip out to help us. So we do love that relationship, and we know it can be hard to get and hard to come by. He's a local guy on the field. But initially, when getting to know him and discussions about his approach, you know, Mike, I really appreciate your kind of medical approach. In fact, in the last podcast that I heard, you were talking about almost being like a medical conservativist, right? You should really think about risk reward as they do in medicine.
You bet.
And I really do, you know, believe in that. I'm in the medical field myself. So I wanted to know, is he the type of guy that attacks the airplane with tools and tears apart? Or is he really diagnostic in his approach and looking to be conservative? And he's related that he said, you know, these guys listen to these guys on the web, and you know, then they want to make suggestions. And he's like, just for example, I recently had a kind of a falling out with someone else that had a bad valve and wanted me to lap the valve, but I just wanted to replace the cylinder. And his viewpoint was that I can replace the cylinder faster after doing the lapping of the valve. You know, it may still not solve the issue, and you'll be paying a bunch more, and then I'll still have to replace the cylinder. So that was his viewpoint just on that one example. And then the other thing that comes up from time to time is, and I'm wondering, maybe this has to do with the military background of just his experience coming from the military.
Remove and replace. Yep.
Yeah, just replace it, if your engine's run out, it's time to replace it.
Yeah.
So
unlimited pockets.
So Paul, to your point, and appreciate you and Colleen so much for your experience and education and how you guys teach. But you know, to your point of you know, we're headed for a breakup, I feel like these could be sticking issues in the future. So do you stick with the A&P that's available, and he's a great guy and you do like him, but you have these disagreements, or do you try to win him over to the bright side, if you will? Or do you find someone, you know, try to keep finding someone else that aligns more with your philosophy?
So much to think about. Well, for one thing, it's really nice that he lets you know up front what his attitudes are. You know, the TBO is a one-time fits all, and they'll say the engine is run out, but they can't define what that means. So what about the engine is run out? And they just can't tell you how to define that. And how much time do you have before, quote, the engine is run out?
Probably around 600 hours at this point.
And what is that, 6 years from now?
Mm.
So my son is using it for, you know, his primary and commercial, you know, training. And,
okay.
So
and 3 years.
Well. Yeah. Okay.
So 3 years. Well, so you have 3 years to figure out where you're going to go.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, changing the mind of a mechanic, this is going to sound terrible. It's not as bad as getting the FAA to change a regulation.
but it's close.
But it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough.
Yeah.
And that's whether, I don't know, people are just people. It's not specific to mechanics. So I'm not bashing mechanics. It's just, that's how we are. We have this mindset of, this is how things function. And this is what I believe based on whatever. And as Colleen said, if they're ex-military or airline or, commercial operators, it's not their money. And to them, like the cylinder event, it's just so much easier. Let's just change the cylinder. Well, it isn't faster to change a cylinder. You can lap a valve.
Well, but even if it was faster, it's not
still
the right
not the way
thing
to go.
do. Benny,
Yeah.
let's suppose that you had your annual echocardiogram, and it turned out that you had regurgitation at your aortic valve, and you needed to get an aortic valve replacement. And you go to this old cardiologist, been around for 1 million years, got a great reputation. He says, I don't really believe in this transcatheter aortic valve replacement stuff. It's just easier to crack your chest open, put you on a heart-lung machine, stop your heart, and just do it the old-fashioned way. What would you do? You would say, no, I don't want you to do that. I want you to do a TAVR on me. Okay. And if he refuses to do it, then you got to go find another cardiologist.
Totally.
So
agree.
the real question in my mind is this mechanic who has obviously this old way of thinking, which so many mechanics do, it's probably how they were trained. Is he willing to do things your way, even though they're not the way that he would, normally do them? Or does he think he owns the airplane because he's an ex-military guy and he says, hey, you go away and let me do my job. Don't tell me how to do my job. Yeah. That's really the question. Is he willing to do things the way you want them done, or is he not?
I totally agree with you. But the difference here is that he's not just doing a one-time thing with this guy. He has a relationship with this guy for ongoing maintenance throughout the year. And that's working well for him, although other situations could develop. And there aren't these A&Ps aren't a dime a dozen. I mean, it's possible.
Right, well, Colleen, I don't think we're disagreeing. I'm saying that the optimal situation would be to have a good conversation with this guy and say, look, I really want you to maintain my airplane, but I want you to do it my way.
That's not going to work. I
don't know, but it's worth a try.
It's worth a try. And he has 3 years to try, right?
Yeah. So take a gentle approach.
Well, he might not have 3 years if he has a leaky exhaust valve.
That's true. So here's kind of being the lifelong mechanic. Here's sort of how it works out in the brain. Primacy comes into play real strong here, whatever they learned originally. So if their first exposure to aviation was the military, the airlines, or corporate, then that parts changing mindset is pretty hard to overcome. So it's going to have to be a very careful application of education and I don't know, cookies, whatever it is it takes. What you want him to get his head around, the idea is that you want to do what is the safest thing to do. In other words, what increases the aircraft's dispatch reliability. Changing a cylinder is a lot of downtime. It adds other kind of risks. And if he says, I do it all the time, it's not a problem. But the truth is, mechanics and pilots do lots of things all the time. And there are problems, which is,
it's like saying, I bust minimums on approach all the time, and so far I've not had a problem. It's just
that's a terrible idea. So you're going to have to really figure this guy out. And as you said, you like him doesn't mean he isn't a good mechanic. That's not what we're talking about. But it is your airplane. The FAA says that you are in charge of the airworthiness of your airplane. Your mechanic is only in charge of the airworthiness of the work that he does. So you just have to convince him that a valve flap is way safer. It's a better way to go, and it's within the allowances of the regulations. There's nothing sneaky about it at all.
And I would say to him, look, even if you're right and the valve lapping takes you an hour longer than the cylinder change, I'm happy to pay you the extra hour, just to minimize the likelihood that something's going to go wrong. I have to feel safe in this airplane, and this is what I need to feel safe.
But if it takes him an hour longer to do a valve lap than it does a cylinder change, then
something's wrong.
Need to really you need to rethink your relationship with this mechanic.
It might take him an hour longer the first time he does it. When he's going through the learning
he's done
curve.
it before. It sounds like.
I don't know.
The lapping.
Yeah. So I have to just a short story. I had the reverse situation with a customer many years ago. Flew all the way up here from Texas. I won't say where. In his brand new from the factory 172 that had dual vacuum pumps. And at about 200 hours on this airplane, maybe 300, he wanted to replace the 2 vacuum pumps. I'm like, why do you want to do this? Well, it just, and he carried a spare vacuum pump around. We had 2 on the engine and 1 in the baggage area.
Wow.
And so for 2 years, or maybe 3 years in a row, this went on. And finally, he sent me we sent him an email and said, hey, you coming for the annual this year? And he would come up and work with the airplane. He's one of those very involved kind of owners. And I had been persuaded him, look, you've got 2 on the airplane. They're working fine. Run whichever one fails first, replace it. You've got another one. He didn't fly IFR. He's a VFR guy.
Wow.
And so the email I got back was, it was very short to the point. It wasn't really a nasty gram, but it was like, I'm going to be doing my annuals at home from now on because I'm tired of arguing about replacing the vacuum pumps.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. So, okay. I did not see that coming at all because I never saw it as an argument. And I was just like, this is the better way. Wouldn't you rather do it that way? And he would acquiesce and go home. Anyway.
Can I have his spare vacuum pumps, the ones he's starting?
Yeah, exactly.
I know a good home for them.
he needs a modified vacuum pump mounting so that he can change it with like a quarter turn,
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Pop it off kind of thing. Yeah.
Wow.
So, anyway, you're the one in charge. And if I had been really sharp, I would have said, fine, you want to do it. We will do it. So, but I didn't realize I was pushing the envelope. I thought I was being very helpful.
Benny,
as your mechanic does too. That was my point. Your mechanic believes honestly that changing the cylinder is the better option.
I think you're
out
going
of
to
curiosity, what is the age of this mechanic?
Mid-50s.
Oh,
mid-50s.
Okay.
Has he been doing this all his life?
I would have guessed it was older than that, but.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I understand he retired from the military.
So
he's partially retired.
Colleen hit it spot on.
That does explain a lot because the mindset of military mechanics is just different.
Yeah, Benny, my money is on you're going to be playing the field pretty quickly here, mechanic-wise. I mean, I don't know
I don't disagree with that, although I would like to hope that at least some mechanics are slightly educable. But
hopefully, but reading between your lines, it sounds like it's an intractable situation.
Yeah, it might be.
Well, thanks, Colleen, and Mike. I really appreciate your TAVR example because it's and actually I'm on the industry side of in medicine, and so it's all about educating and getting people to change their approaches to things.
Yeah,
So
I bet it's hard to get doctors to accept new approaches. They're probably very much like aircraft mechanics.
Yeah.
Maybe not
unless it makes more money for them.
No, well, they're very risk averse.
Yeah, except surgeons. Surgeons are definitely the hardest, and that's the mechanics.
The mechanics are the surgeons of general aviation. Absolutely,
yeah, that's right.
Cool.
But I am hopeful, perhaps over time, stressing the safety focus. Paul, it's a great suggestion, and really because I think that's what's so amazing about your education. What all three of you do, is we live in a world of data now and analysis, and tells us the better ways, to go. And so I really appreciate your message and your work, and you do it in a fun way. These shows are fantastic. So thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate the calls. Good question. And hopefully you can patch things up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Will.
Bye-bye.
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 All right, so it's time for letters. John says he has a couple of comments from the Placard It in Op episode. The first is about the Piper landing gear strut, the leaking strut, and the subject of air versus nitrogen. The point was made that the reason for using nitrogen versus shop air had the objective of eliminating the water that can cause corrosion, of course, from normal air. He said, while this is true, it's also important, perhaps more important, that by using pure nitrogen rather than air, it will mean we are not adding oxygen to the strut. The presence of oxygen is necessary for the most common forms of corrosion to occur. So using nitrogen instead of air, which contains 21% of oxygen, we're reducing the likelihood of oxidation. So he said it's not,
sure.
Yeah. So he also talked about the question about brakes and the subject of lubrication of the caliper pins and the torque plates. Mike said he uses an anti-seize lubricant, and Colleen suggested to assure the pins and bushings are clean and dry. Cleveland actually has a specific recommendation for this situation.
They do.
Yeah, in the maintenance manual, they call for a product called, and I've heard you guys talk about this, called LPS. It's a Force 842 from LPS. This is a dry moly film lube that is readily available in a spray can. Try it. You'll love it.
It's specific for the caliper pins?
I don't know if it's specific, but this is what he uses. That's specifically what Cleveland calls out.
That's the LPS I haven't run into. I've got 1, 2, and 3 in my box. But
what number is it again? LPS?
It's Force 842.
Force, like the word?
Yep.
842. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dry lube, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
The problem with most people want to lube those pins with something wet.
And that's
the whole problem. It gets all clogged up with things.
Yeah.
Yep.
Caliper.
Well, I've used nickel anti-seize on mine for years and years and years without any issues.
What?
Well, anti-seize is wet, right? No?
Yeah, it's a paste.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. That's weird. What about like a silicone lube like I use on used to use on my Bendix? Would that work?
Yeah, I don't like silicone lubes.
Okay.
Teflon's cool. I'm getting away from silicone.
Maybe I meant Teflon. What do we use on Bendix drives if we have those starters?
What's LPS 1? Isn't that a silicone lube?
No.
I think so.
Like light oil.
I haven't looked to see what it's made of. I don't typically use it.
At any rate, it's interesting that there's some recommended product which
really made for it.
None of us seem to use. We all use our own.
Try it out, yeah.
But that's acceptable, not approved, right?
Yeah, well, and the Cessna and Piper manuals can call for something else, which they do. But you can always use what Cleveland says because that's the manufacturer.
They probably call for motor oil. Wait. Okay.
All right. So Kyle writes in about the battery capacity check. A good discussion. You guys sort of questioned whether it was good or bad for the battery. Actually, you sort of agreed that it was bad for a battery to do a capacity check. And he said, I thought I'd write to you about the capacity check in my years of working with batteries before becoming an A&P. He said a capacity check might actually be a good thing for a battery, as the deep drain followed by subsequent charge will help with desulfification of the battery. The pulses that many of the modern day chargers create when charging are specifically meant for this purpose. These pulses are at 2 to 6 millihertz and are usually around 8 amps of charge, but can be more or less.
Yeah, the smart trickle charger that I keep my airplane on all the time is in that mode, is in desulfation mode.
So a deep discharge will also desulfate, is what he's saying. Interesting.
Yeah, could actually help it. Paul doesn't seem convinced.
I don't know that the good outweighs the bad.
Can't prove it.
And I don't have any data. It's only anecdotal. It just doesn't seem healthy. But, I'm not a battery guy.
But this guy is a battery guy.
I
know.
think we need to defer to the
battery guy.
To the battery guy.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Finally, the misfueling with the Diamond diesel. You remember that one? So Steve says regarding the consuming
gas can a diesel.
Yeah, basically how much avgas can you put in the diesel engine? He said, first, let me make it clear that this is coming from an old diesel injection pump mechanic with no direct knowledge of this particular engine. However, as a general rule, when a diesel engine is operated with fuel that is contaminated with any significant amount of gasoline, often the first component to suffer damage is the fuel injection pump. The moving parts of these pumps have extremely tight tolerances, and the diesel fuel itself provides the lubrication.
Right.
In the past, I've repaired or replaced pumps that have seized for this reason. The pump failure would likely not occur until after a period of operation, meaning potentially in the flight following the misfueling event. Boy, that's scary for a flight school airplane. Yep. I agree that the combustion event / engine components are not the primary concern, but rather the fuel delivery system.
That's good information.
Yeah,
I had not thought about
and
that.
it makes perfect sense.
Sure does. Don't we have great listeners?
Yeah, I learned a lot this time.
No, I'm really glad people write in and help us out with this stuff. It's good. Because then everybody gets to hear a different opinion.
So our next question is from Duane, who's wondering exactly what approved means. Hey, Duane, how are you doing?
He's not the only one.
Fine. How are you all doing today? Thank you very much for taking the call. And I appreciate everything you do. And just so you know, I'm an acolyte of the Church of Savvy Aviation. So, Savvy Aviation.
That's great.
I have to look up acolyte. Dang it. Everybody's always coming up with new words.
Well, it's a three-part question. I fell in with a couple of really good aviator type, a father-son team, CFI, A&P, AI. One was a B-26 pilot during the war. The other one was a Navy helicopter guy. And they never saw an airplane they didn't want to buy. So I've been privy to all sorts of a range of rag and tube airplanes. Just so you know, I'm an old airplane guy. I like data, but I'm an old airplane guy. So I came out of the factory in 57. And so anything that came out of the factory after me, I don't have much interest in.
That's great.
With that being said, I've spent 12 years with these guys, and I'm working on my A&P and moving in, and they're pushing. And I got the mechanic side part down. I've been tinkering on. I grew up on a farm, so working on machines has been something done forever. But now I'm trying to figure out the FAA side. And
good luck with that.
You guys are kind of helping us through the wizarding world of Part 43. And the question is about approved data. One, are Xerox copies of a factory drawing considered approved data by the FAA? Part two, are drawings reverse engineered from an intact original parts eligible to be designated approved data by a DER? Because I'm an AutoCAD expert, and I did a lot of, from the entertainment industry, I've done lots of drawings of CAD drawings of parts and widgets and things to work around. And the way I look at it, if I have a part in front of me that has some corrosion in it that really doesn't make it an airworthy part, but I'm still technically, in my brain, holding a three-dimensional factory drawing. Maybe that's not the way to look at it. So if that's
exactly the way to look at it.
Yeah.
So if I make a drawing, can a DER stamp it? And then the third part of the question is it a reasonable expectation on my part that there is actually an answer before I go down this rabbit hole?
Yeah.
Well, first, let's dispatch the first thing. The Xerox copies, if the copy is legible, it's approved data. I mean, the data hasn't changed.
Yeah, if the data was approved in the first place, a copy of it is just as approved as the original.
It doesn't have to be on parchment.
Yeah. Well, also part of this, I became a funk guy. I don't know if you know if any of those. Yeah. I went down that rabbit hole. So we've got 2 7/8. Oh, look at that. We've got 2 7/8 airworthy. I've got the third one's just about ready to go.
Wow.
And I've got 4 more carcasses. That, I hate to see these airplanes go extinct. So my retirement side hustle is just putting these things back together. But drawings, the drawings got burned up in a factory fire, blah, 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 blah. So anything I can do.
Well, then you're fortunate that you have Xerox copies of them.
Yeah.
Are they really Xerox?
I was about to say, are they really Xerox copies?
Some of them are scans of, like for the stick conversion that goes with this, I had a pencil sketch that had all the information on it, drawing C201-25, drawing blah, 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 pencil sketches. I created a set of drawings through my AutoCAD work and, nice data plate, the plates on them and everything, referencing the original drawing numbers. But I was told that those didn't count if I referenced that information in a 337, and this is all in the context of taking the A&P written test. And if these questions come up,
that's probably a problem. But a photocopy of it, and please do me a favor, scan it and get it in a digital form so it can't burn.
I do. That's what I've got.
In a Dropbox or something. So
well, that's what we just. The fun group I'm in, I created the page on Facebook, and I've set up a Dropbox where we're all going to upload our digital files and photos.
Cool. Good.
Not photos,
cool.
but because some guys have this factory drawing that they've made a copy of, large format, regular, copy scan of a large format scan.
We'll move up on to the second part of your question, which has to do with reverse engineering. Now, reverse engineering is absolutely a legitimate way to obtain approved data. And in fact, when Superior Air Parts decided that they were going to make cylinders for Continental engines, how do you think they did it? They got a bunch of Continental cylinders. They sliced them up into very thin sections and, basically reverse engineered the cylinder and got an STC for it, actually a PMA. Okay, so it's absolutely legitimate. The hard part about reverse engineering is it's pretty easy to get the dimensions, but it's a little harder to figure out what the materials are and what the heat treat is and all that kind of stuff. And to get to turn it into, that's typically on a drawing. If you have it, it says what the material is and everything. But if you just got a part in your hand, you're reverse engineering it. The hard part is figuring out exactly what the material is and what like I say, the heat treat and all that kind of stuff, alloy and that can take some work. But that's why we have DERs, and they can certainly approve of reverse engineering. They just have to be satisfied that everything is known that needs to be known.
Is that so? Reverse engineering falls in the category of an owner-produced part, right, Mike?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Or a repair.
Not necessarily. A Superior cylinder is not an owner-produced part, and it was.
But in his case, a historical airplane.
Well, in your case, presumably it would be an owner-produced part if that's what you're doing. Is you're taking a defective part and trying to create a duplicate that isn't defective. That would be an owner-produced part.
Yeah. Yep. So the thing about just to go back to the documents.
And by the way, you only need, I don't know what part we're talking about here, but you only need approved data if it's a major repair. And most things aren't.
Sorry, that my computer didn't get that. Mr. Mike, I didn't hear what came through. My computer or something had a glitch, and I didn't hear you're just.
Oh, I said it. You only need approved data if it's a major repair. And I don't know what I don't know what part we're dealing with, but if you were if you were reverse engineering a door handle to make a 32
Ford in a Funk.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Then
are you doing wing spars or door?
My point is, if you were reverse engineering a wing skin, you don't need approved data for that. You only need acceptable data for that. If you were reverse engineering a wing spar, you'd need approved data for it.
Right.
And he probably is doing wing spars.
Again, the acceptable and approved, that's another area I'm trying to get through it because I've got advisors who are telling me this is approved data and this is acceptable, and other guys are saying no. Like the 4313 is only considered acceptable data, not approved data.
Oh, that's not quite true.
Well, again, like I said, the reason I came on with my question is I've got so many sources that are completely contradictory.
Well, so let's ask the FAA. So let me go back to the document thing first. And
what's the 4313 reference?
4313 1B.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is acceptable data, except if you look at the signature page, it tells you when it can be approved data.
Got it.
So the FAA, you don't have to ask all your buddies. Just go to the signature page and it will tell you under what conditions it is approved data. Boom, you're done.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I have the book, obviously, but yeah.
So back to your drawings, though, if you make a photocopy of an existing approved data, that is perfectly fine. If you redraw it, that is not the same thing.
Yeah,
because then there's the error of you leaving something out, transposing numbers, all that stuff. So anyway, just wanted to make that point. But yeah, 4313 1B, change 1, absolutely can be used as approved data if it meets the criteria.
But check the criteria of the signature page.
And the criteria, if I recall correctly, Paul, I might not. It's just it has to be an unpressurized airplane, and it has to not be contradicted by manufacturer's guidance.
Pretty much. Yep. Yeah. It reads different than it did 15, 20 years ago, where they did a rehash of it. I was challenged on this at an IA renewal class back when I wasn't an IA yet, and Bill O'Brien was teaching the class, and he wanted to know if you could use 4313 as approved data. And if anyone's ever been in Bill O'Brien's class, he's passed on now. He was one of my FAA heroes.
Oh, he was everybody's hero.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. And so I was dumb enough to raise my hand and say, yes, it was. Well, Bill was one of those kinds that he would call on you and explain why. And I'm like, well, it says I can right up in the front. And he said, how did you know that? And who told you that? You know, that kind of thing. He would get very dramatic, which I loved.
And you said you did.
I did. I said, well, last year when I was in this class and I raised my hand and I said that I had read it, and then you pointed it out, said, you're the one that told me that. And he said, and that's true because he was the one that wrote it. Yep. Yeah. And so anyway.
Yeah, I remember having an email correspondence with Bill O'Brien about Actively Engaged, where he opined that I could not possibly qualify to be an IA.
Here you are.
So, but I ignored him, and
you ignored him.
But he was a marvelous person, just a marvelous person.
On the subject of approved versus acceptable, Mike's second book, Chapter 32, talks about, is it legal to install? And he goes into great depths about, can you install this? What kind of approval basis do you need? So you might check that
out. Well,
shameless
that's going to be the next purchase.
There, yeah, he's got a bunch of them.
Yeah, this whole approved versus acceptable is an area of great confusion among mechanics. There seems to be this general idea among many A&Ps that you can't do anything unless it's approved. And first of all, it's nonsense. And second of all, a maintenance manual isn't approved except for Chapter 4. The rest of it's just acceptable data. It's not approved data.
But that's okay for a lot of things. You don't need approved.
But anything that's in the service manual,
mechanics would consider something that's in the maintenance manual to be approved data. They'd be wrong about that, but that's just kind of this common misconception.
We all need a law degree to do this stuff.
That's true.
I mean, that's the problem.
No kidding, right? Wow.
Yeah. I didn't choose to be a lawyer when I picked up a wrench. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. Well, those of us in the funk community and the it's like when we talk and get together, is there anybody at the FAA could look at this airplane and tell what was right and what was wrong anyway? Those guys are gone. So.
Well, that's true, but it's very true that because you have this orphaned airplane, 4313 becomes your accepted data. So, and like Mike said, and this is very
often your approved data.
If
you're doing a major repair.
If the work you're doing is not a major repair, you do not need approved data.
Right. And just rebuilding the airplane the way it was originally designed isn't a repair at all, right? It's just a reassembly, or that's
it depends. So it's fabric covered. So fabric covering has some rules.
If you have unairworthy parts that need to be replaced, and you have to fabricate the parts because that's the only way you can get parts for these airplanes.
Repairing an engine mount is a major repair.
Yeah.
No,
but you can typically repair them using the procedures in 4313-1B.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I do. That's sort of with the champ and the chief and the air coupe. It's like my default is go to both Vern Senior and Egg said 4313. Just do it. If you do it like they tell you, that's the best shot of the next A&P down the line, not freaking out and wanting to junk the airplane.
Yeah.
To quote them, is it? And that's kind of what I want to do. Is I just want to make sure for this airplane to keep going, is that there's got to be, hopefully somewhere, there's going to be at least one A&P that is willing to look at it, because those guys are dry. They have no interest in 75-year. A lot of guys have no interest in 75-year-old airplanes.
Yeah,
they're death traps and should be grounded. But
no, that's not usually what they think. They usually think, I'm going to lose my shirt if I work on this airplane.
Yeah.
Skeletons.
Yeah, this is going to cost me a fortune. I'm going to do this guy a favor. Yeah. No.
A lot of times, a lot of mistakes.
Maintaining those airplanes is so labor intensive.
But if you like that sort of stuff.
Oh, totally. We're not missing it. Believe me.
Then do like Duane is going to do and get his A&P and do it yourself.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, that's the point. Is like, and then help out other guys. Just in my is like to get it done, and then said, all right, I'm until I can't do it anymore.
That's cool.
Old airplanes are my thing. So
I
got zero interest in retractable gear. Now I agree with you guys about data monitors, and I mean, I'm not abhorrent to that sort of stuff. I just, if the oil pressure gauge up, oil temperature gauge where it's supposed to be, and the spinny thing out front is still working, I'm good to go. So,
Yep. Cool. With a C85, you're probably fine like that.
You may be just fine.
Yeah.
No, like I said, it's just, I mean, I definitely appreciate all that.
You could probably even mow corn with that thing.
Absolutely. Yes. It's tractors. They're old tractor stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, thank you so much for everything you do. I really appreciate it. And Colleen, you have the patience of Job.
You're right. I do.
Really appreciate your work, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks
for
Duane.
the call, Duane.
Enjoy that flight. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, it looks like we made it through another episode with just a few scrapes and bruises. Hopefully we got some of your questions right this time. Please let us know what you think. Keep sending us your questions. Our email is podcasts@aopa.org.
See you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.